This is Dark Illumination Report, podcast episode 4.
This is the Dark Illumination Report, podcast with R.J. Womack.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining me for this episode of the podcast. I want to apologize for the lengthy delay in getting this episode out, but things have just been out of sorts and even my writing's off. Everything's been off this week. I'm just out of sync and I don't really know why. As I said, I'm going to be talking about my beliefs in Satan, and I'm going to be getting into that in detail in this episode. But before I get into that, I want to talk to you about a few new segments I have planned for the show. I'm going to be adding a book review segment, and I'm going to be adding an entertainment segment. The book review segment will be about any type of book that I think will help you along your spiritual path. And the entertainment segment will be about shows related to the occult or Satanism. Shows like Lucifer or the new Damien series or anything like that that might relate to Satanism in some way or have a satanic theme or occult theme. I think entertainment is a lot more important than people give it credit for in shaping people's attitudes about Satanism and about occultism, and I think it isn't ever addressed in a serious way, and it isn't ever taken seriously. And I'm going to admit right now that I am a horror fan, and I am a fan of supernatural themed shows, so it's not just about promoting Satanism. It is a genuine interest of mine, but I just want to point out that I think it should be taken more seriously than it is, and unfortunately, people don't give it much thought. And I'm going to tell you my reasons why I think it should be taken more seriously, and I hope you'll agree with me. In addition to adding a few new segments to the show, I've also decided to change the schedule to a biweekly schedule. So that means we'll be having a new episode every other Sunday instead of every Sunday. The reason I've decided to do this is because I really want to make the show as high quality as I can, and I feel like in the last few episodes the content hasn't been up to snuff, simply because I've been kind of rushing the episodes, and I don't want to put out low-quality episodes. This is something that I'm doing reluctantly because the whole intention of doing the show weekly was to try and give people a sense of community and to let them know that there are other people out there like them who believe in Satanism. You see, I believe that people who actually worship Satan are such a small minority that it gets really lonely out there. It gets really lonely trying to practice by yourself. And most of us are geographically separated. We're not near other people who practice religious Satanism. So I wanted to be here every week to give people that encouragement and that inspiration to let them know that there are actually Satanists out here who care about Satan and who care about this religion. But I just don't feel like I can give you the quality program that I want to deliver if I don't take some time to do proper research and make the best quality content I can. So that was why I decided to do it this way. Anyway, with that said, let's get on with the show. Now, the first and most important thing to understand about my belief in Satan is that I believe everything in the universe is made up of the same energy, including the gods themselves. And I believe the gods have been here forever. And even if, for the sake of argument, we say that the gods had a beginning point, it would have been so long ago that it really makes no difference to mankind whatsoever. I mean, we can't say when they started. We can't say how long ago it was, and does it really make a difference to us? It's kind of like when you start talking in scientific terms, when you start talking about 3 billion years, it really means nothing to us in practical terms. So it's the same thing with the gods. I mean, none of us will ever know if they had a starting point and what that starting point was, and none of us will ever be able to answer that. So to obsess over it seems ridiculous. So I'll just say that I believe that the gods were here and have always been here. And I believe that Satan decided to intervene in mankind's evolution. He decided to impart knowledge to mankind that altered his DNA and expanded his intelligence and gave us the ability to reason and learn and gave us self-awareness so that we could think for ourselves and have free will. And that resulted in us evolving and eventually led to us developing agriculture and civilization and technology and science. And I believe we owe all of that, besides our self-awareness and our free will, all of the technology that we have today is the result of Satan's intervention. And that's a very important reason as to why I worship him, because I believe we owe him respect for all the things he's done for mankind. This is something that Christians will never understand because they believe that Satanists worship Satan out of fear or out of a desire to get something, And in many cases, Satanists may start out coming to Satan with the idea that they're going to get something or request something in return for their soul or a promise that they make. But eventually what happens to most Satanists is they mature in their belief in Satan, and they have a respect for Satan and a love for Satan outside of whatever they thought they were going to get, because they don't worship Satan because they have to. They worship Satan because they want to. They worship Satan because they come to love him and respect him for all that he does for them and all that he's done for mankind. And this is something that a Christian would never understand. I want to take a minute to make something clear so there's no confusion. I call Satan Satan because that's the name I'm comfortable with. But whether you call him Lucifer, Aramond, Set, or whatever other name you might choose for him, we're talking about the same entity that intervened on behalf of mankind and helped him to evolve and to become what he now is. And that's what we're talking about here. And I just want to be clear about that, because I know some people aren't comfortable with the Christian names and imagery, but that's just the name I use because that's what I'm comfortable with. If you're not comfortable with it, that's fine. But just realize I'm talking about the same entity. For a lot of Satanists, they tend to stay away from the Bible or the Quran or other religious text. Sometimes I think it's because they fear that maybe by reading that text, it'll cause them to doubt or question their beliefs. A lot of times they'll act like, oh, it's because the Bible's stupid or because the Quran is stupid or whatever it is, and they'll act like it's because they dismiss it. But really, in a lot of ways, I think it's because they fear it. They fear that it might cause them to question their beliefs and cause them to change their mind, and so they stay away from it. They'll never admit that, of course, but I think for a lot of people, that's what it is. For me, I've never felt that way. I've never been afraid of the Bible or anything about it, because it's not going to change my beliefs. It's not going to change my dedication to Satan, and I have no concern about that at all. My beliefs in Satan are firm, and they will stay firm until the day I die, because it was an eternal commitment that I made. It wasn't a temporary choice. It wasn't a choice that I made just because my life was going well or because things were going bad at the time. You know, I had bad luck and I was looking to Satan to save me from all my problems. I meant what I said, and I intend to stand by that till my dying day. I'd like to backtrack a little bit and talk a little bit more about magic, because I think it all ties into what I'm talking about here. When it comes to magic, we need to start with Hermeticism, because Hermeticism is the foundation of all systems of Western magic. And it's important to understand the mythology concerning the origins of Hermeticism and alchemy in particular, in my view. Now, whether you believe in magic or not, that's not the important thing. The important thing is that you take the time to study the mythology concerning it, because it kind of illustrates my points about Satan imparting certain knowledge to mankind. Now, there are a couple of stories concerning the origins of Hermeticism. One is that the Egyptian god Thoth is the one that taught Hermeticism to mankind. The second one is that the fallen angels taught the art of Hermeticism and magic to mankind. And the third is that Jehovah taught the art of magic and mysticism to Adam, which is one that I do not believe at all, simply because the Christian God and the Christians currently now are so against mysticism and so against magic and occultism. And because I believe that the Christians are possessed with the spirit of Jehovah, that indicates to me that there is no way that that is possible, especially when you take into consideration that the Bible clearly prohibits the idea of practicing magic or contacting the dead. Now, whether you choose to believe any of these stories or not, whether you believe they have any relevance or any credibility at all, is up to you. But the most important thing that I think to consider is that Hermeticism is the basis of all Western magic. Okay, it's the foundation upon which it rests. Now, there are other philosophies and other ideas that are integrated into magic in the Western world, but Hermeticism is the foundation of high magic. What is the purpose of high magic? All forms of high magic are all about spiritual growth, spiritual evolution, and trying to help man evolve, trying to become the best he can be to reach his full potential. Some people would even argue that the purpose of Hermeticism and Western magic, high Western magic, is to achieve apotheosis, to become godlike. And that's the key characteristic of Western high magic, is it's all about becoming greater than you are, becoming in contact with your higher spiritual self. And this is something that Satan has always been known for trying to help man achieve a greater understanding, to become more like the gods. And that's what I find most interesting about the idea of Western ceremonial magic, because it's consistent with what Satan has always taught, what his message has always been. He wants mankind to evolve and to become better and to become greater than he is. One of the things that I find incredibly interesting is the fact that the mythology of the one god that went against the other gods is not just Christian. It's not just a Christian myth. You can see it in paganism, in Greek mythology as well, in the story of Prometheus. Prometheus wanted to give mankind fire. Zeus did not want him to give mankind fire. The reason Prometheus wanted to give mankind fire was because he wanted mankind to evolve, and he wanted to help them because they were cold and primitive, and he wanted to help them learn how to cook their food, and he wanted to help them learn how to make weapons so they could defend themselves. Zeus did not want him to give mankind fire because he didn't want mankind to learn and evolve and grow. One of the things that I find most fascinating about all of this is that the theme of the gods being afraid of mankind gaining knowledge and wisdom and being able to unite against them is even present in Judaism and Christianity. The Christian God continuously talks about how he doesn't want mankind to have eternal life. He doesn't want mankind to have knowledge that is the equivalent of the gods, because what does he fear? He fears that if they do, they'll be like the gods. They'll be able to challenge him. This is a consistent thing with the Jewish God. You see this theme all throughout the book of Genesis. You see it with Adam and Eve and the serpent. You see it with the Tower of Babel. He's constantly concerned with what mankind is doing and what he can do to challenge him. If Jehovah was the all-powerful and all-knowing God that he claims to be, then why would he be worried about anything like that? The answer is simple. It's because Jehovah is not the all-powerful God that he claims to be. To me, Jehovah is something more akin to the demiurge of the Gnostic beliefs. The demiurge is a god that is cruel, sadistic, and wants everybody to believe he's the creator god. He's a parasite that feeds off the pain and misery of others. And if you don't believe this is true, consider this. How many murders and suicide bombings and everything else you can think of have been committed by those who believe in the God of the Abrahamic religious traditions? How many people have been murdered and killed in the name of the Judeo-Christian God? Compare that to how many people have been murdered and killed in the name of pagan gods, or even in the name of Satan. There's no comparison. The majority of crimes committed around this world in the name of religion are committed in the name of the God of Abraham. That is something that is not just an opinion. That is something that is verifiable, because you have to understand that the Muslims worship the God of Abraham. The Jews worship the God of Abraham. The Christians worship the God of Abraham. And all of these religions have killed and murdered people who would not convert to their religion. All of them. And there is no comparison when it comes to the Christians compared to any other religion. They have killed more people, the God of the Abrahamic religious traditions, than any other religion on the face of this planet. And that is beyond dispute. And if their God is so full of love and kindness and cares about everybody so much, why is there so much bloodshed in his name? Why does he seek to control everyone? Why does he seek to damn everyone? It's because Jehovah is the great pretender. He's the great parasite that wants to control everyone and everything, because he is not the true creator. He is not the truly powerful God he claims to be. He wants control just like his children want control, because they are possessed with his spirit. If you look at any terrorist attack, it is always motivated by Allah, right? That's what they say. And the Christians will argue that that is not their God. But here's my question to you. The Muslims will tell you that the God of Islam is the God of Abraham. The Jews will tell you that the God of Judaism is the God of Abraham. The Christians will tell you that the God of Christianity is the God of Abraham. So if all the religions agree that the God they worship is the God of Abraham, what does that tell you? All of their religions consider Jehovah their God by whatever name he is called. So the next time you see a terrorist attack, I want you to remember that that act is being committed in the name of the God of Abraham. I don't care whether it's ISIS. I don't care whether it's Boko Haram. I don't care if it's Al-Qaeda. They're all committing acts in the name of the God of the Abrahamic religious traditions. Don't ever let yourself forget that, because a lot of Christians want you to forget that. They want to claim that their God is not the same God as the God of Islam. But to the people in Islam, it is. And it's funny that the Christians will always go out of their way to say any God or any group that does anything that they don't like is not their God. They'll say, oh, the Islamic God is not the same as our God. Obviously, it's the devil. When you talk to any Christian about the Spanish Inquisition, what's the first thing they say? Oh, that wasn't the Christian God, that was the devil. If you try and talk to a Christian about like someone like Mark Dice or Alex Jones, and you talk to them about how crazy they are, the first thing they'll tell you is, oh, they're not real Christians. They are actually influenced by the devil. Isn't it funny that when it comes to Christians, it's never God's fault? But when Satanists do something illegal or when Satanists do something bad, oh, that's just how Satanists are. We all know that all Satanists commit criminal acts. All Satanists are child molesters. All Satanists kill babies. It's funny, they're willing to give themselves a pass, but they're not willing to give those of us who worship Satan and are law-abiding citizens a pass. It just proves how hypocritical they are, just like their God. They're pretenders. You see, their whole peace, love, and light routine is an act. Just like their God, it's a mask. It's not real. It's just a way to try and control people, to get people to convert to Christianity so that they can feel like they're doing something for their God. They're trying to collect souls for their God. That's all they're worried about, because that's all he's worried about. He feeds off the pain and misery of his followers. And in order for him to continue to exist, he must feed off of other people. So their whole goal in life is to try and get people to convert for his sake. It's not about mankind. Jehovah has always been about himself. Jehovah has always only cared about himself, and he's always wanted to enslave mankind. You see, ladies and gentlemen, it's real simple. This isn't about good or evil or dark or light. It's about slavery versus freedom. You see, I believe there are two forces in this universe. There are two forces that are trying to do the opposite of each other. There is one force, spiritual force, whether it be God or gods, that are trying to enslave mankind. And then there's another set of God or gods, another God or gods, that is trying to liberate mankind. What I'm about to say right now is not going to sit well with my neo-pagan friends, but I believe all forms of paganism and Satanism come from the same source. Hear me out before you freak out. Think about this. As a general rule, pagans do not seek to convert other people to their religion. As a general rule, pagans do not have any problem with the natural state of man, and they have a respect for the earth. As a general rule, we generally don't consider the idea of sin a viable belief system. We don't believe in it. We don't consider it. We don't even take it into consideration. Okay? Satanism also doesn't have a problem with any of these things. Another thing is that when pagans went to war in ancient times, did you ever notice that they're not actively trying to convert each other? They're not going to war with each other over religion. They're going to war with each other over resources, over water, over food, over land, over power, but never about religion. Because paganism and pagan religions, including Satanism, have a tolerance for other people's religious viewpoints. The only religion that consistently tries to convert people and forces people to convert against their will by threat of death are the ones based in the Abrahamic religious traditions. Paganism and Satanism do not. To me, this is an indication that these religions come from a common source, and they preach a very similar message. Whether our Wiccan friends like it or not, it's the truth. Now, I know there are going to be pagans out there who go, of course, Satanism is similar to paganism because basically Satanism is the Christianized version of paganism. That's okay. You can believe that and you can think that and you may be right. You won't get any debate from me on those issues because historically you'd be right. But here's my point. I believe that the gods of the pagan religions are the gods that want to free and liberate mankind. Whether you call it Satan, whether you call it Pan, whether you call it Ahriman, whether you call it whatever you call the gods, there is clearly a set of gods that is in opposition to the Abrahamic religious traditions. And those religions that oppose the Abrahamic religious traditions have always accepted mankind for the way he is, have always accepted mankind's true nature, have never taught us to believe in sin or guilt or shame about what's natural to us. And we all have something in common because we're all trying to find our way. We're all trying to grow. We're all trying to evolve. And all we all want is to be free. All any of us really want is to live our lives in peace and to be free to live our lives the way we want to without somebody telling us how to live, how to think, what to read, or what to write. That is something that all pagans share in common. And that's the message of this podcast. I believe Satan is the God behind that. Whether you call him by whatever name you choose to call him, I believe that to be true. Now, you may not agree with me, but we're all searching for the same thing. We're all searching for freedom and peace to live our life the way we want to. And that's the important thing. And that's the message I hope you get from this podcast. Before I wrap things up today, I want to make something perfectly clear so that there's no misunderstanding. There are a lot of groups out there that are racially motivated. My problem with Islam, with Judaism, with Christianity are based only on their religious ideas and their religious philosophy. It has nothing to do with their race or nationality. I just want to be clear about that because I don't want anybody to think that I have a problem with someone just because of what race they may be. This is not a racial issue. It is a religious issue. I oppose anyone who worships Jehovah because he is the enemy of my God. And that's the way I see it. And it's just as simple as that. So the next obvious question would be, so how does all this impact my belief in Satan? How does it affect my beliefs and my practices? Well, first, I believe it's my responsibility to try and help people to grow and evolve and be the best person they can be and reach their full potential, not only for themselves, but for Satan. When I was young, I made a commitment to be a servant to my God. So to me, the term servant is not a negative thing. It's not a Christian thing. It's just a fact. I want to develop myself so that I can be a good servant to my God, a good servant to my religion. And I want to help other people to develop themselves so they can be a better instrument for Satan and his cause. That's what I believe part of my job is. And like I said, I'm not trying to tell other people they have to believe like me. This show is for people who agree with me, who think the same way I do. This show is for religious Satanists, devout Satanists who believe in Satan. Secondly, I think it's the responsibility of every Satanist to try to free anybody who's interested in being free from the social conditioning of the Christian-based society we live in. There's a lot of people that spend their life feeling guilty about everything they do and about everything they desire, and there's no reason for it. This mentality didn't come about until Christianity became the dominant religion in the Western world. And that's what you have to understand. People didn't always live this way. People didn't always think this way. A lot of it is due largely to the Victorian era. A lot of the things we think about sex, a lot of the things we think about relationships. It's like the whole idea of marriage being between a man and a woman. If you do research into the marriage practices of various cultures, you will find that it has not always been between one man and one woman. The marriage ceremonies and the marriage arrangements vary widely from group to group and culture to culture. But Christians like to create this false narrative that life has always been the way God has intended it to be, or life has always been the way the Bible says it is. And it's not true. If you look at the historical record, you will see that it's not true. The way the Western world lives and the way the Western world thinks about relationships, marriage, and a wide range of other issues has not always been the case. But it's something that the Christians try to perpetuate. And what we want to try to do is free people from that mentality and help them to realize that there are other ways to look at the world. And you don't have to live in guilt and fear, and you don't have to be a slave to the Christian mindset. You don't have to be an animal waiting for judgment or waiting for the slaughter. Thirdly, I think another thing that's critically important is the need for Satanists to preserve their culture or to preserve their history as much as they can. Now, admittedly, the history of theistic Satanism or spiritual Satanism, devil worship in particular, is sketchy at best, and most accounts we have come from a Christian perspective. But whatever history there is and whatever texts there are need to be preserved, and they need to be protected and cared for, and that's not being done. It's almost as if nobody wants to take up the responsibility of being a scholar for religion. And I think that's particularly important, especially for those people who call themselves priesthood, to do that, because that's what priesthood traditionally did. And if we're not doing that, then we're not doing our job if we call ourselves priesthood. At least that's my opinion. Another thing that I think is important to point out is that because I have such a great respect for Satan and the demons, and because I consider them my gods, I don't do anything to protect myself or to command the spirits. I feel that protecting myself from them is a sign that I don't trust them, and it's a sign of disrespect. I feel that commanding them or trying to command them, not saying that I ever really could, but attempting to command them, again, is just not something you would do. And certainly you would never use the name of any god other than Satan to ask them to do something for you. Whether it's a lesser demon or a greater demon, it doesn't matter. The idea of trying to command them in the name of some other god, especially the Christian god, is just insulting. Another thing is, I don't buy into this commonly held belief that's very popular right now, that we are equal to Satan, or that we could ever be equal to Satan, and that we could ever be gods on his level. I believe we can improve ourselves. I believe we can do great things. And I believe we can always be more than we are. But to ever believe that we could be equal to Satan or on the same level with Satan, or that we have any level of understanding that even comes close to what Satan understands, to me is just stupid. To me, it's just an example of human arrogance, and it's disrespectful to Satan. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with believing in yourself and believing in your full potential. I believe that's what Satan wants us to do, is to be all that we can be. But believing that you're equal with Satan is just insulting to Satan, and it's insulting to the demons. And I've never understood why any Satanist in their right mind that had any respect for Satan would ever think they could be equal with him or on the same level with him. I just find the whole idea ludicrous. Anyway, I think that'll about wrap it up for today. That summarizes my basic beliefs about Satan and what I think our responsibilities are as Satanists. And I think those are the most important things. And I'll get into some other topics in more detail later on in future episodes. But for now, I think that gives you a pretty good idea where I'm coming from. And that's the most important thing. I'd like to wish everybody who observes the spring equinox a happy holiday. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Dark Illumination Report podcast. For the latest news headlines, show information, and more, go to rjwomack.com. That's rjwomack.com.